rehabilitate. I'm not even sure what the word you use when these hospitals have been dismantled like this, but to try to rehabilitate Shifa Hospital. The civil defense, the municipal services, the policing in the north still exists, as do the fighters, in such a way that we're able to see these videos responding to claims that we hear in the media, that the Kassam brigades are able to respond and communicate with us through these videos, that the resistance has been able to continue in the north that we've reported on the whole time, but also that the civilian services, the governance of Hamas, which is also part of the people, is still intact. And part of the ceasefire negotiations are to address that, the fact that Hamas is still able to carry out these municipal services despite the blockade, the starvation, the man-made starvation in the Gaza Strip. That Israel's military objectives haven't been reached even in a modicum, even by their own numbers. They're saying that more than 80% of the tunnel network is still intact, and they were using that number 80% based on 350 miles of tunnels. But the Israelis are saying now that they believe there's 450 miles of tunnels. So you're talking about in excess of 80% from the Israelis' own numbers. And I'm sure as soon as the war is over, Kassam will tell us what percentage of the tunnels are still intact. But this is the IDF's attack on Gaza City. They said, we're concentrating our efforts on Hamas's attempts to rehabilitate in the north. All police stations were attacked. That's what they said the other day. So they're not attacking the military of Kassam. They're attacking the civilian police force. And so we could just see with all of these examples that the civilians are the target of this. So let's do number 4 here tomorrow. We can see in Gaza City, where it took 3 divisions of the IDF to take originally to move into Gaza City. Here we see fighters from the Kassam brigades moving through the city, passing their Yassins in order to get between buildings the walls have been blown out of by the Israelis, in order to reach this Merkava for Israeli tank from above, which is they were down on the ground floor, and we watched in the video as they climbed up to get an elevated shooting position and showing their fighters both with the camera. And here we're seeing the burning tank, where some people have asked what the impact is of these Yassins hitting these tanks. And we don't see it, as I talked about last show, because the fighters are disciplined and well trained in order to fire and then get out of the way before return fire happens. So we often don't see the tank destruction. But there we see a brand new 75-ton Israeli tank burning, being hit by a Palestinian-made Yassin warhead that's created from Israeli bombs that didn't explode, that are dropped. And we know that those are all over the Gaza Strip right now. And so after this generation of warfare, maybe we can pause it right here tomorrow. Look at this shot right there to give you a sense right there of that. Again, I talked about it last week, but that's just military vandalism. To leave a building intact like that, but to blow out its walls, you're not serving any military purpose for the IDF. You're actually just giving Palestinian fighters a high point from which to fire down on the Israeli vehicles from. And that's what we're seeing. This is a home destroyed for a Palestinian family, but not a military objective for the Israelis. So we're seeing that the ability in Gaza City for the fighters to move around the city still. We're still seeing them choose the weapons that are appropriate for the situation. We're not seeing anything that looks like running out of weaponry now entering the 5th month of this war. Kassam themselves have admitted to firing, to using more than 1,000 Yassins so far in this war. And so that's a shot from Gaza City, just to give people a sense of what's happening in Gaza City. Maybe we can go to number 5 now tomorrow. Again, using the rubble, moving through these destroyed buildings in order to stay off of the street. And this is an excavator that's being hit, so it's not as armored, as up armored as the tanks are. And so we see him, Kassam fighter, using an appropriate warhead for that vehicle. Now we're seeing a second one from an elevated height using a different warhead. This is a third shot of a fighter moving into the street and hitting a tank from the street. And now we're seeing here is a sniper operation that took place in the Gaza Strip the other day, and the Israelis admitted to this middle officer here being hit. He's a deputy commander of the Shaldag unit, which is an Air Force special operations unit, whose mission is to, quote, deploy undetected into hostile environments. And when we come back around to the sniper, we'll see that he's definitely detected, because we see a Kassam sniper unit here using an Al Ghul Palestinian-made sniper rifle, and we're seeing the fighter inside the building use his full weapon is inside the building, unlike the Israelis that we've seen that poke their guns out of the buildings and are seen. We can see this fighter is completely inside the building. He's using books to stabilize himself. He's using sandbags to stabilize himself. And because the Kassam brigades are doing so much reconnaissance, it appears that they're able to determine who the commander in this unit was and target the commander And we cut off the end of this strip to keep the end of this scene to keep this video online. But the soldier is hit, and the Israelis admitted that the deputy commander was killed. And like you said, Ali, Yedio Aharonot said that this commander died in a confrontation, which that certainly doesn't look like what we're seeing there. But also, just to note, Channel 12, the largest TV channel in Israel, pointed out that this commander was responsible for the Shifa operation, where the soldiers went into Shifa hospital, dismantled the hospital, and then took trophy pictures inside the hospital. Channel 12, while celebrating this commander, said that he was in charge of the Shifa hospital operation. So again, we're seeing Palestinians not only existing and operating throughout the north, moving around freely throughout the north, but we see them selecting the target here, and selecting the commander and hitting the commander. So you're seeing Palestinian weapons being used with great skill by Palestinian fighters against targets who are symbolically the people who I believe will go down in history as the people who dismantled Shifa Hospital. I don't think history is going to reflect on Shifa Hospital and the dismantling of the hospitals in the Gaza Strip in the way that they dealt with it in the moment, coming up with excuses that filled the news cycle while Israel was dismantling the hospital. So that's in Gaza City, and that's the Al Ghul sniper rifle named after the first Kassam Brigade's weapons commander, whose vision for the resistance was to get these weapons into the hands of all of their fighters, rather than having a few, amazing weapons that they would get middle of the road weapons that are usable for into the hands of every fighter. And that's what we're seeing 20 years after Adnan Al Ghul's assassination. We're seeing fighters using these weapons that are made in the Gaza Strip that are able to be used by all different fighters in quantity. And that was the vision of Adnan Al Ghul. And here his rifles being used to snipe the commander of the Shifa hospital operation.
Thanks for watching this video. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel, hit like, leave a comment,